Good evening and welcome to the Danube Regional Library. We're so happy to have you here this evening for our parent workshop. Catherine Miller is here. She's the program coordinator for the Triple P program, Positive Parenting Program through Boone County Early Childhood Coalition. And tonight she's going to talk to us about morning chaos and routines that may look a tad different these days or may need to look a tad different these days. My name is Sarah Howard. I'm thrilled to have you here tonight, and I'm going to turn off my camera, and the internet fairies will let Catherine visit with us from afar. Thanks, Catherine.
Hello, everyone. So Sarah said I'm visiting from afar because I'm a poor planner of my life, and I often enjoy last minute chaos, and that is what I did to myself by overbooking myself. So that's all right. So I'm actually, so back before life changed for all of us, I was going to an in-person training um, down in Branson, and the rates were really low. You could stay there for $75. And so I made the deal. And then I forgot about that. I made the deal. And then you couldn't get your money back because it was a last minute deal. And so here I am almost in Branson in this condo that I forced myself to come to because I paid for it and I don't waste money. So anyways, chaos, right? That's what we do. So tonight I wanted to talk to you guys about just kind of that morning routine, that chaos that's going on. I had a few emails about, could we also talk about what life looks like at home now, what people who are working from home, schooling from home, and kind of that type of chaos. And then if you guys have any other things that you want me to incorporate, let me know. And I will say I'm very willing to do if there are several people who want something extra. I've had a few messages about evening routines and what that might look like, and transferring that home life, school life to actually, an evening routine. Since everyone's at home, how do you get good transition? So if that's something other people are interested in, just let me know. And that's something we could probably set up and do. And I just have to send you the Zoom link out. So usually, I am Catherine. I do the Triple P program, which stands for Positive Parenting Program. And so we do these community seminars. And then I also do one-on-ones with people. So the Boone County Children's Services Board funds this, so it's absolutely free. It used to be for ages 0 to 8, but now with the pandemic, they have approved us to go up to age 12 for the one-on-ones. And then of course, the community programs are open to anyone. So please let me know if you need to set up a one-on-one because there's something specific you'd like to go over. So morning routines. When we think about morning routines in Triple P, we really kind of talk about what does your morning look like? How do you get out the door in time? Whose job is it to make sure you get out of the door on time? Do your kids have any part in the morning routine or setting that up? So just kind of thinking about what does morning routines look like? So if you're not working outside the home right now, your mornings may look a little different, but we still need those structured for kids, or we find that they still have some chaos that goes on. So the first thing is, what time do we need to get up to be out of the house by a certain time? So if people were not working from home, and some people aren't, and we're making sure we need to get kids to school and to daycare or whatever, whoever's watching your kids, we usually talk about what does that morning routine looks like and how much time do you need to get out? How much time do you need to not be chaotic in terms of do kids need to eat breakfast in the morning before you go? Do you need to pack lunches? Do you need to pack bags? Like what has to happen in the morning? So what I find a lot of time is parents go ahead and think about what time they want to get up and how much time they think everyone needs to get ready. And what we find is it's far more than that we really actually need. So we should always plan about an hour to an hour and a half of time before you have to leave out the door. That allows for everyone to get up and get everything that needs to be done, and not feel rushed and not feel chaotic. What would make a difference in that is if you are not feeding people you may be able to roll that back about 30 minutes. And so, getting up and getting ready an hour beforehand. So, I'll answer. Okay. So that's kind of where we're at. Like, how long does it take us to get ready? So I think the other thing to look at is how old are your children? Can they get ready by themselves? Do they need assistance? What is their job? So one of the things that I usually talk about in terms of morning routine is that everyone has a job and that needs to be discussed. So what is their job in the mornings? So we can often make morning routine charts, and I suggest that you can either type that up or you can write that up. A good thing to do is laminate it, so then you can mark it off for the day and then wipe it down. Or if you'd like a sticker system where maybe you put some Velcro on things and then you can move those things when they're complete, that could be an option. But so what is their job? So let's take, for an example, someone who is 5 years old. So they should be able to get up in the morning. They should be able to get dressed themselves. And a caveat to that is making sure that their clothes are laid out in the mornings so that they have two options to pick from. And both of those options have to be something that you've already agreed upon. And so you pull those out of the closet, you lay them down for where they're choosing, and you tell them you have two choices in the morning of what you want to put on. That eliminates the standing at the closet. You pull something out, they say they don't want to wear it, and that back and forth that may take up more time. So go ahead and put two choices out and then allow them to choose from those two choices and get dressed in the morning. And then what else is their job besides getting dressed? So at 5, they should also be able to brush their teeth. And so some people may say, well, they just make a mess. They don't put the toothpaste on. I don't know if they brush their teeth correctly, but this is a learning stage, right? So if you would like to follow up with them, or you would like them to come get you so that you're a part of that, that's fine, but you're teaching them to become independent. So the longer you do it for them, the longer it's going to be before they're able to do it for themselves. So being able to check in with them and make sure that they've gotten the things done. Also at 5, if your house is a bed making house, they should be able to pull the covers up, nicely tuck things in and put their pillow on top. So if that's something you like in your house, at 5, they should be able to do that as well. So we would write all those steps down on our morning routine of things that you expect to be done. And I often say it's okay to go ahead and put a time frame. So let's say you wake them up at 6 a.m. and they're supposed to have all those steps done by 6:30 a.m. So you would make a list. You would start at 6 a.m. You would write the things that you expect done by 6:30 a.m. And that would be the completion. So people often say, well, kids can't tell time. And I would agree with you. And we're only putting it down as a means of keeping us on track, but it also may be a way of starting to tell time. So if you have digital clocks around, the kids may be able to see like the 6 and 1-5, 6-2-0, like they can start seeing it. That's also helping them to learn to tell time. A lot of parents these days have, what's her name? Alexa, or they have a Google Nest and they can set timers in their house. And then the kids can say, Alexa, how much time is left on my timer? And Alexa will tell them. So that's another option. But you're really trying to get them learning what time management feels like. So if I say, go do something for 10 minutes, most kids don't have a concept of what 10 minutes feels like. That's something you grow into or learn into unless you're baking, right? Because I can never know when 10 minutes is and my stuff is always burnt up. So it's just getting them used to knowing what a feel of time feels like. And so you can go ahead and set that timer for them. Then at 6:30, they would be expected to do the next set of things. So if you wanted to have them come and get you and you start that bathroom routine, and that bathroom morning routine could look like teeth brushing, hair combing if you assist with hair combing, washing your face off in the mornings. So what other, what transition things do you need to do? So now we went from things that are in our room. So we were able to get ourselves dressed, pick up our clothes, make our bed, get our socks on, and get dressed. And then we would move to the bathroom time. So that would look like brushing our teeth, washing our face, combing our hair, things that you would do in the bathroom. And so you might give about 10 or 15 minutes for those things. So let's say we got 15 minutes and we're at 6:45. And so the 6:45 time would be the transition down to the kitchen. And at that time, that would be time to have breakfast ready on the table and for everyone to eat. And then you would need to make a decision on how much time do your kids need to eat? How long do they generally take? 20 minutes or so is about a good amount of time for breakfast. There's usually not a lot going on at breakfast. I don't know too many parents who get up and are gourmet cooks first thing in the morning. So it's usually something quick like a bowl of cereal, or maybe it's a breakfast bar, or maybe it's, overnight oats, something that you have decided upon that they're going to have for breakfast and they're sitting down to eat. And so the allotted amount of time, again, I'm really supportive of, Alexa or someone, how much time do we have, and discussing how much time this is going to take so that we stay on a schedule. And then we're going to move to our transition schedule. So that's the getting out of the house. So what needs to happen before we can get out of the house? In the summer months, there's a little less, right? So it may be just putting on the shoes by the door and going out the door. But as the seasons change, it may be putting on shoes, getting on a jacket, and then getting your bag and be ready to go. As we move into winter, it may be putting on your shoes or putting on your boots and making sure shoes are packed if we're wearing boots. Do we have coats? Do we have hats? Do we have gloves? Do we have everything we need? And we'll talk some more about that in just a moment, but helping kids be prepared for everything that they need to get out the door would be part of that. So again, that morning routine, we're kind of about a little bit over an hour there, was we got up in the mornings and woke them up. They were able to get dressed on their own, get to pick out their clothes between those two choices, get their socks and everything on, and then transition to the bathroom time, which was brushing our teeth, washing our face, combing our hair, whatever extra you want. And I will add going potty in there. So that may seem odd because most people get up and go to the bathroom, but there are some kids who are routine, right? So they're a morning pooper and they need 15, 20, 30 minutes for that. So if that's your child's case, then your bathroom time may need to be expanded and you may have to have a shorter morning routine, or you flip the two. So bathroom time is your first thing that you do, so that they can go ahead and use the restroom, and then they can go ahead and brush their teeth, comb their hair. If you have to be a hair helper, then maybe they don't comb their hair until after they get dressed because you're going to be fixing it and you don't want them to get it messed up. So depending on what you need in that routine, that would be how you would write that routine for the child. So we want to give them visuals to make sure that they know where they're at and they can take ownership of getting themselves together, getting themselves ready, and that you can take that time, that you trust that those things are getting done to get yourself ready and to be able to get yourself out the door or to do whatever you need to do in the mornings. So maybe you are the one cooking breakfast. Maybe you are the one packing lunches, whatever else you need to do. I'm a firm believer of packing lunches in the evening for the next day for things that can be refrigerated. So I have children who do not like cold bread. So they would pack their meat and their cheese in a baggie, and then they put their bread separate in a bag, and they would leave that out on the counter. So the next day when they pulled out their lunchbox, then they put their bread in because they didn't want their bread cold. Whatever quirks your kids may have, how do you accommodate that? So then let's look at, so that was kind of the 5-6 age range. So let's move up. For that 6-7-8 age range, they should be able to do most everything on their own. So they're getting, besides waking up. So they're able to get up, get dressed, get shoes on, brush teeth, comb hair, like everything they should be able to do instead of you having to monitor and help that. Now, I still suggest a checklist for them because they may forget things, right? They may forget the order. They may forget timing. They may get distracted. So I still recommend having something visual to look at so that they can go through the checklist and what's expected of them. So we're really talking about what's expected, because what we want to do is really start setting the situation for them to be able to get dressed on themselves, get themselves ready for school. And when we say get yourself ready for school, so that you know what's expected of you and what that outcome needs to be. And what you're doing is setting yourself up so that if those things aren't done, then we're going to start giving consequences, because we were not able to get ready in time. We were not able to get our shoes on. We were not able to do what was needed. And so we're going to start implementing consequences. But it's really hard to implement consequences when you haven't given your children the ability to be successful in those times. So we're really starting out with a learning experience. And in the very beginning, you may have some time frames that you think things are going to be, but you may really have to work those things out. And what I mean by that is you may see that your child can get dressed fast, maybe get the room picked up, and get things done, but then like their bathroom time was longer, or it took them longer to eat breakfast. So you may need to play with the time, but what we're doing is trying to get an establishment so that you're not yelling in the mornings, we're not rushing around, we're not forgetting things. So often kids are shuffling out the door, and we find that things are forgotten. So homework is missed at home because it wasn't put in the bag the night before, and they thought, oh, I'll grab it off the table or I'll grab it off of wherever and put it in my bag in the morning. We often find with the morning chaos that doesn't happen. So that pre-planning on the other side is really important. So preparing for the next day is something that we need to make sure that's done. So I suggest what that might look like is, we did our homework. Do we put that back in our bag so it can go to school the next day? If we're going to pack lunches, packing the lunch and getting that prepared for the next day. Where do we put our lunch box? How do we make sure that everything that we need is in our lunch? We're trying to make sure that you as a parent aren't trying to accommodate things after the fact. So you get a call, oh, I left my lunch. Is your plan to go home and get it and take it to them? Or is your plan to go ahead and pay for school lunch because they need to eat? So that pre-planning will help you not run into those last minute situations. What about homework? What happens if I leave homework at home? Do you bring it to me? Or do I serve a consequence at school for not turning in my homework? And usually my response to that is we all forget once, right? We may all forget twice, but it can't be every day. I'm not going to go get your homework every day because you forgot about it. There's got to be some learned consequences for that, some natural consequences. So perhaps you have to stay in at recess and redo the whole thing because you didn't bring it to school. The good news about that is it should move quicker because you've already done it, right? That would be the bright side of it. But you have to let your kids know that you're not constantly going to be running back and forth to accommodate things that should have been taken care of the night before. Another problem parents often relay is we don't know where our shoes are, right? So we came home, we took our shoes off somewhere, we didn't put them by the door or in a specific place. So when it's time to go, someone doesn't know where their shoes are. Now, many people today probably have some other pair that you could just go put on, but perhaps you don't. Perhaps you only have one pair of school shoes. And so what do you have to do in order to make sure that you know where the school shoes is? And so you have to have a routine when you come in the door. So where do our shoes belong? Where do our backpacks belong? Where is there a place for things? And so if you as the parent don't have that designated, then it's really hard for a kid to get into a routine because there is no designated space. So part of helping them be organized is you having to be organized as well. And that might look different in each household, but you got to have a plan. So I have teenagers who often in the beginning may not have known where their keys are. So in our house, you come in and it used to be that you put your keys in this little, container by the door. That was what it was when I had my oldest at home. So when I have 16-year-old twins started driving, they wanted lanyards. And so they come in and they actually hang their keys on a designated place in our house. So that way in the mornings, they're not looking for keys to be able to get out the door on time. So we discussed where are we going to place our keys? What's the plan going to look like? How are you going to be organized to get yourself out the door in the mornings? Because once mine were drivers, I don't feel like I'm obligated to help, right? So if you can't find your keys, that has nothing to do with me. I hope it works out for you because you can now be late to wherever you're going and it doesn't affect me. That's kind of where I'm at. But, I want to be supportive with them and helping them to have a routine and a plan. And then if they don't stick to that routine and plan, then they have some natural consequences, right? So now they may be late for school because they had to search for keys. And then they may have to serve a detention because they've been late to school too many times. So those natural consequences, I'm really, really supportive of that you brought it upon yourself. And how are we going to learn better from it next time? So, maybe your kid forgot to put a drink in their lunchbox. And you might say, well, I think today you're going to drink water from the faucet, or not the faucet, sorry, that's a little hardcore, from the water fountain because you didn't pack your lunch today or pack a drink in your lunch today, right? So I'm not bringing you anything. I'm not going to allow you to charge it on your lunch. You're just going to have to eat and then go to the water fountain to get a drink, right? That would be a natural consequence because you didn't pack it, you didn't have it, and this is the solution for that. So you're not saying to your kid, oh, you get nothing to drink, but you are saying, I'm not coming to bring that for you because you forgot to pack it. So you're helping them to take ownership that they're the ones who forgot it. So they're going to serve that natural consequence. And then tomorrow they can make a better plan to make sure that they pack their drink. So we're really being supportive of really growing independent people. And so I think someone had mentioned, is this a plan just for the kids? So no, you want to get out of the house on time too. So are you packing your lunch? Do you know where your shoes are? Do you know where your keys are? It's a household routine so that everyone can leave on time and get out of the house as they should. So we kind of looked at that next set of age range. So let's say you have preteens. How can they help in this process? So we usually have one end of the spectrum or the other. So either our littles are the really hard ones to deal with, or our preteen teens are the really hard to deal with because they don't want to get up in the morning. The reason is the same for both ends of the spectrum, but how old they are makes a difference. So, your teen can wake up late and hustle themselves around. But usually if your little wakes up late, it's a meltdown and a tantrum. And you're the one having to put their clothes on for them, put their shoes on for them. They become the wet lip noodle who can do nothing. But your teen, usually you're just riding them instead. You know what time it is. You haven't got this done. And so that's messing up your routine as a parent. So with our preteens and teens, we also usually make a list and have expectations. So if they don't get those things done, again, you're ready to dole out some consequences. So what's it look like if you don't get up and get yourself ready for the morning? So in that preteen teen stage, perhaps your answer is when it's time to go, we go out the house. If you don't have your hair combed, I'm sorry for your luck. There's a brush or comb in the car that you can, run through your hair, but we don't have time for you to do your hair as you may have wanted it, right? So we're giving those natural consequences for things that they didn't get done, and it's time to go. And here's where we're at. So, if they didn't pack their lunch, you're not bringing something for them. You're really working through what are these natural consequences for not getting things done. A lot of times those preteen teens will forget things that they need for their sport. And you have to decide what level of support are you giving? Are you willing to run some cleats up to school sometime through the day? Or are you, saying, hey, this is your fault. If you can't participate, I'm sorry. But I'm not coming to get you either. You'll have to participate to your best of your ability, or you'll have to sit on the sideline and watch. But this is a natural consequence to what's going on. So that's kind of looking at our first steps of morning routines. And so then we talk about, what do we need to do to prepare to make sure that we as a parent can get out the door in time? And so we kind of talked a little bit about that, but your routine is important too. Have you built in time for yourself to make sure that you can get what you need to get done in the mornings? So again, like who's cooking breakfast, whose responsibility is that? Who's planning for breakfast? Because is it wake up, I open the fridge and make a decision, or do we pre-plan? So I am completely a fan of meal planning. So on Sunday, you plan out what you're going to have for the week and make sure that you have everything you need, or if you need to go to the store or not. And so, Monday you're having pancakes and you're going to make pancakes in the morning, they're going to throw a piece of sausage in there and grab a piece of fruit, right? So you have it written down, you know what it is, everyone knows the expectation. Tuesday it's granola bars because somebody has to be at school early. So you have to, make your day fast. And so you make sure that you say it's granola bars, grab you a couple of granola bars, and we have to be at the door quicker. So we're not going to have time to sit down and have a meal. But that also helps your kids to have the expectation of what to expect, right? So if I know it's Tuesday granola bar day and I don't want a granola bar, then it's my responsibility to be able to get up and be able to have a conversation with you to say, I don't want granola bars tomorrow. Can I fix my own cereal, right? It's not your job to change the routine or the expectation. It's my job as the child to say, I don't want cereal. May I have, whatever else that is an okay option with you. So that's teaching kids that independence to be able to speak up and ask for something. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. You may say, no, the answer is cereal or be hungry, right? But you also may say yes. And, what's that expectation, right? I don't want to have to make you cereal in the morning. I don't want to make toast in the morning. If you want something different, it's your job to be able to do that. And so agreeing upon something different also means agreeing upon something that that child can fix for themselves. You don't want to over obligate yourself. So yes, you can have pancakes tomorrow. And they're like, well, are you going to make them? Because I don't know how to, or you don't allow me to. And so you've agreed to a meal change that now you have to be responsible for. So that pre-planning of the meals, I want you to look at, what do we have to do for the day? What time do we have to get out? Do we have a little more time on certain days? So if you have a child that has to be at school early for something, then that's not a good day to have a full meal breakfast of pancakes, sausage, whatever else, unless you're going to get up to early to accommodate that schedule. So I'm really looking at parents, you are the drivers of this and kind of the time holder. So have you set up your schedule accordingly? So let's move on to what does our virtual life look like, right? So it may be easier if you don't have anywhere to go, that you're like, oh, I can sleep in, right? I can wake up 20 minutes before I have to be at work, roll over, throw a top shirt on, right? Because I can stay in pajamas. I can stay in whatever because you don't see the bottom half of me and I'm ready to go, right? But our kids are also, a lot of them, are homeschooling. So, they need to stay on a schedule. So if you're letting them sleep in and they're not getting up on time for school, or they're meeting their Zooms or doing what they need to do, then that's kind of an issue because it's saying we don't have to get up and do things that are important. So we can take as long as we need to get ready in the morning. You can drag yourself onto your Zooms and whatever, and that's not the expectation. So we really want to set the expectation of having our kids get up and still follow that morning routine, even though you're not going anywhere. Now you may shorten that. So you don't need an hour and a half to get ready to hop on a computer in the house, right? So maybe you need 35 minutes or 45 minutes for that, because you still want them to get up and brush their teeth in the morning, comb their hair, and look presentable on their Zoom. Because when we switch back, we don't want to have to start new study habits again. We don't want to have to start study habits, new morning routine habits. We don't want to have to start that process all over because we let it go by the wayside. So all we're doing is shortening our duration, but we still have the same expectations of things to be done. And so what are we having for breakfast? Do we have breakfast situated? Are you ready to start your day? That's what we're saying to our kids. We've done our morning routine and we are ready to start the day. So I will also say, where does your day start at, right? So now that everybody's at home, do we have designated learning spaces? And some people may say, that's not possible in my house. And I would combat that and say, yes, it is, right? It's possible to have a designated space. Now, that space may not be what you want it to be, right? It's not, let's go to the office. Let's go sit at this desk that I've purchased. It may be you sit at the kitchen table, right? I've set up a TV tray in our living room, and that's your new workstation for your child, right? There's some designated spot. So they know where to come and be prepared. And so when we say be prepared, what does that look like? So do you have your iPad or your laptop or whatever you need? Do you have the charger for that? I would even take a step back. Did you charge your device the night before? Right? So that they can be ready to be on and engaged all day. Now, some kids will be like, it's okay, I'm going to plug it up all day. I don't have to charge it. If that's okay with you as a parent, that's fine. But we need to know where these things are. So what happens if the device starts dying in the day and then they don't know where the charger is? And so that's an issue. And they're coming to you to help find the charger because they're supposed to be on the Zoom and you're supposed to be at work. And so we're creating chaos unnecessarily. So if the rule is we charge our devices at night, then we know where the charger is. Okay. We know where the charger is, and we know what the expectation is. So we'll have our laptops and everything charged, and we're ready to start the day. We know where our designated spot is. We have our devices ready, and we're ready to be an active listener. So I think one of the questions that kind of popped up to me was, what happens if your child doesn't want to get dressed, right? I saw it for a hot second, but I don't see it anymore. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Things move on my laptop. So what's the natural consequences or cons for that? So I think you have to set what's the expectation first, right? So before you can give consequences, you have to have an expectation. So I expect you up and dressed by. I expect you to have school clothes on. So what is the expectation of you set for that? And then if the child doesn't comply, then what's the natural consequence for that? Well, a lot of times we have, for that age range, they may have other designated screen time that's fun time. So maybe they're going to lose some of their screen time. The other thing is maybe they're going to have a consequence. And I really love chore jars. So chore jars are things where you say, you now have to serve a consequence, go pick something out of the chore jar. And the things in the chore jar are things that we don't have time for, right? So they're wiping baseboards. They may be taking the mop in, putting a dust rag over it, tying a rubber band around it, and the kid goes around and dust the ceilings. It may be sweeping the floor. It's chores in there that they may particularly not choose to do, or maybe you don't have time to do, and no one's going to enjoy doing it, right? So 7-year-olds can definitely empty dishwashers. It's something that's not their normal chore though, right? This is something extra that they will have to serve and do. And so let's say they didn't get dressed in time for school. It's now time to school to start. So this time you are going to have to allow them to go in their pajamas. But as soon as they have that first break, there's an expectation of, it is now break time and I expect you to go change your clothes. And if you don't change your clothes, you will have another chore to choose. So then school is over and it's time to cash in on those chores. So we can't do anything else fun or the next step of things until our chores have been completed. So I would never have you say, oh, stop and do that chore because you should be at school. So I don't want you to say you're going to miss school because of it. We serve that consequence at the first available moment that they can. So if it's after school, before they can move on to something fun on their own, then that's what it is. And that has to be completed before they can have their, fun downtime. So some kids may be watching a show. Some kids may have outside time. Whatever the next step is, that consequence has to be served before it. So let's say you guys don't have consequences right now in your life, and we're going to set up those things. So how do we set that up? How do we set up the expectation? So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have a family meeting. You're going to bring all the parties involved to that meeting, and you're going to discuss what's the changes going to look like in your household. So if we're going to move to having that before bed checklist where we make sure our devices are on, our clothes are picked out, our lunch is made, we're going to talk about that at that meeting. We're going to set up what is our pre-expectation and what are the things we have to what are the things we have to have done and what are we changing? And then the next part of that is talking about what's the new morning routines are going to look like, and that you're going to, and this is the expectations. You may introduce the checklist. So maybe you've made a checklist for that. You might have put it in a notebook. You might have a whiteboard to write it on. However you intend to communicate with them, you need to show them that night so they know the expectations. Excuse me one second. Sorry. And then you're going to ask them if they have any questions, right? This is the time for clarification during the family meeting. What do you not understand? What do you need help with? How can I clarify my expectations of you? And do you understand the expectations? And then you will roll into the next set of that. So these are the things I expect in the morning. And if you're not doing them, then you'll move into a consequence. So we do always give a warning, right? So a first warning would look like, I've asked you to get your clothes on and you haven't got your clothes on yet. So this is your warning. And if you don't have your clothes on the time I come back upstairs, then you're going to serve a consequence. So we're always giving warnings before we give consequences because we should know what's expected. That's in essence our reminder. And then if we don't complete it, then we get a consequence. So oftentimes with that, right around that 8 age range, they want to do things independently and they don't want you nagging at them. So that's really where that time frame is important. So we kind of mentioned like maybe you had from 6 to 6:30 to get something done. Well, it's your job not to nag them or get on to them until 6:30, right? So you would say in the family meeting, between 6 and 6:30, these are the expectations I expect to have done. At 6:30, when I come to check in on you, if you don't have those things done, then there's already going to be a consequence. So what parents get into the habit of is it's 6:15, you're not dressed yet. It's whatever time and you're not done yet, right? So you're trying to micromanage their time. And that's not what you're doing, right? You've set the expectation, you've given them the time limit, and you're going to let them grow in that. And if they don't, then they're going to serve that consequence. And so you're talking to them about the schedule, the routine, and the expectations, and that they're going to be consequences. So the exception to the warning is if you have those time limits, right? So you're not going to come back upstairs and say, oh, it's 6:30. This is your warning. You haven't completed things. I'm going to give you a consequence if it's not done when I come back. So that's not what we do. If we have designated times, when the time goes off and it's not complete, a consequence occurs. If we don't have something that's designated time, then that's when we give the warning. So here's an example of that. The kids are supposed to be getting ready. They're roughhousing on the ground, roughhousing with each other. And one of the family rules is we don't roughhouse. So you would say, you guys are breaking the family rule. We don't roughhouse. If I have to tell you guys again, you'll both serve a consequence, right? So we've talked nothing about the morning routine in that because they still have like that time frame to be ready. But what we're talking about is how they've broken some other rule in the house that you might need to serve a consequence for. So if they continue to roughhousing and you said that's it, you guys are going to choose something out of the chore jar, then that's what would happen, and they would serve that again after school. Let's say maybe you homeschool, and so you have more flexibility. So you go ahead and say, that's it. Go to the chore jar, choose something, and you're going to do the consequence, and then we're going to get right back to our school day, right? We're going to continue to move on. We're going to serve our time, do our chore, and we're going to move on. We usually can set a time frame to that. So, I expect the baseboards to be done in 20 minutes. I expect, whatever it is to be done in a certain time frame, if that's necessary. So let's say we've had a kid who's had a really big tantrum and they've maybe broken something in the house. And so you've said that's not acceptable. You're now getting a consequence. You're going to go pick up sticks outside. So you may not put a time frame on that because perhaps they need that moment in time to get themselves together, right? So they may be mad still. You may see them throw sticks in the ground. You may see them break sticks against another stick or a tree, but they're really taking forever because they're calming themselves down. They're getting themselves together. And then they may move into their chore, right? So if you don't have anything else planned for the rest of the day, or you don't have a reason to move them along, then you allow that to naturally occur and them to get that chore done. And when they're done, it's done and we move on, right? So we're not harping over the issue. We're saying, this is the punishment. You've served your punishment, and now we're going to move on with our day. So that's kind of an example of how we would rotate consequences in there for things that we do and we don't get done. And you're welcome to take things away, or you're welcome to have children earn things. I'm a fan of earning things versus taking things away, because if you don't have anything to continuously take away, it's really hard to continue um, giving consequences when there's nothing left, right? So if you take away the TV, they've taken away screen time, you've taken away, their favorite toy, you've taken and you've taken and taken because of behaviors that you want to change. There comes a point where you run out, right? So if you earn time for things, then it has to be complete before you get time. So let's say they want to watch a show. You're okay with that. A show is either like 15, 20 minutes long, however it is. Well, then you would give them things that must be completed in order to earn time for that. So if we're going to look at that morning routine, they may get, 5 minutes for getting dressed, 3 minutes for getting their teeth brushed, 3 minutes for having their hair brushed, but everything in that morning routine would have some time attached to it. So if they didn't get it done in the time, so that 6 to 6:30 we kind of talked about, so then they wouldn't have earned all their minutes. They would have earned the minutes for completion, but then we're already moving on to whatever the 6:30 is. That 6:30 to 7 time frame, they would earn some other minutes, and you would tally up for them how many minutes they earned. Now that doesn't take away the consequences, right? So if they didn't complete it, they would still have to serve a consequence for not doing what's asked, but they also haven't earned enough time to watch their show. And so when they come home, they say, "Oh, I want to watch my show." You would say, "I'm really sorry. You have not earned enough time to watch that show." Right? So we don't give them that show until they have enough time, because we both know that if you said you've earned 7 minutes, they're not going to watch a half a show and willingly be like, "And here's the iPad back," or "Let me just hop off." Right? It's going to turn into a fight of, "I want to watch the rest. Can I please have more time?" The begging, the going back and forth, and you don't want to set yourself up for that. So you would not allow the device to watch the show on until enough time, they've earned enough time to watch that show. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. And if it doesn't, put it in the chat and I'll happily discuss that again. So that earning of time makes things much easier. So you may have, maybe they want to earn some special time with mom or dad, and they're working towards changing a behavior. So you could set that time frame up and account the behavior change to minutes, or behavior change to being able to earn time with one of the parents, or to, I'm a huge fan of, you may earn a prize from the Dollar Tree and you can pick out anything you want, right? So they go into the store, you say go wild, pick out whatever you want. And you have to stick behind that, because I'm telling you, the first time your kid comes like with a spatula, you're like, "We don't need a spatula at home." And they're like, "But this is what I want." And you want to have that argument because you know you don't need a spatula, but that's not what you said, right? You said, "Go in, pick anything." And if they would like to leave with that spatula, we leave with that spatula, because that's what we said. If that's not okay with you, then we would say, "Well, we're going to go to the Dollar Tree and we're going to go down the toy aisle, and you get to pick anything you want out of the toy aisle." So if it matters to you what they get, then you have to be specific. If it doesn't matter and you want them to feel like the store is their world, then you say, "Go in, pick something," and that's what you get. But also know that there are candy and chips and all kind of other stuff in the Dollar Tree. And again, if you say you can have anything, you have to be okay with whatever they choose. I had a kid who chose peanut brittle, and I was like, "You don't like that?" And they're like, "Yes, I do." And I'm like, "No, I really know you don't like that." And they're like, "Yes, I do." I'm like, "You know what? I'm sorry, you're right. You made that choice. Let's go." And so they get outside, they open it up, and they start eating, and they're like, "I don't like this." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I know. I knew you didn't like it." And they're like, "Can I get another present?" Well, no, that's your choice. I'm really sorry you chose something you didn't like. And I attempted to tell you you didn't like it, but that you didn't want to hear that, and you made that choice. So it was all about the choice that you made, right? So we're supporting the ability to have choices, but we're also supporting the fact that if you made that choice, then you have to take ownership of that choice. And we sorry, and when we allow children to take ownership of their choices, it's really hard to argue with you, right? Because they made that choice. It wasn't something you put on them. They made that choice. So if the rule in the house, let's go back to that rough housing, right? So if the rule in the house is no rough housing, and you say, hey guys, you guys are rough housing in the house, that goes against the house rules. This is your warning. If you guys continue, then I have to give you a consequence. So when you go back, they're still rough housing, you say, that's it. You guys didn't stop. Go choose something out of the jar. And they're like, I don't want to do a consequence. I don't want you to punish me. Your response is, it's my job as a parent to give you consequences when you choose to break the rule, right? I didn't choose for you to break the rule. I even gave you a warning to have you stop doing what what you were supposed to, but you didn't make that choice. So now, when you chose not to stop roughhousing, you also chose to pick something out of the chore jar because it was going to be an option, and I told you that. And you had the choice to either quit what you were doing and not have a consequence, or continue to you could choose to continue what you were doing and have a consequence. So when they have to take ownership of their choices, you do get a lot less combativeness, right? So you're not walking in, you're not yelling at the kids, you're roughhousing, that's not okay, go to your room, right? Or go do this. That's an immediate response from you. And then the kid may stop and slam the doors because they're angry at you because you're the one who just gave a consequence to it. But as you said, and you gave back, if we go back to the other example where you said, if you continue to do what I've asked you not to, then you're going to choose to have a consequence. It's in their hands. They have that choice right then and there to stop what they're doing or know that you're going to be consistent and give a consequence. Now, that big word in there is consistency. A lot of times as parents, we are not consistent. And so our kids try us for the lack of consistency. So if I know I'm grounded, I'm not supposed to play the game, and I'm like, Mom, can I play the game? Or Dad, can I play the game? You're like, no, you're grounded, right? So then I start doing things that I know annoys you. I start pestering you, and I'm like, can I play the game? And you're like, no, you're grounded. But I keep at it. And the next thing you know, you're like, fine, just take it, go, right? So they know then what you've reinforced is, if I annoy you enough, if I bother you enough, then you will go back on your word and I can have what I want. So my first response isn't to listen to what you said because I'm concerned about getting a consequence. My first response is, I'll just wear them down till I no longer have to serve the consequence, or I no longer have to deal with my actions. And so it's rough, right? It's really rough sometimes as a parent. If you're tired, if you don't feel like dealing with giving the consequence, if you don't feel like watching the consequence till it's done and checking in, it's tough. You don't want to deal with it. But if you don't deal with it, you send the message of, I'm not going to be consistent. So why should you be consistent? Right. And so if I'm not going to give the consequence, like I said, I would, then why would you believe that you're going to get a consequence, and why would you stop your behavior? So our consistency really, really makes a difference. I teach some other things, and there is an episode that I show some other parents where they're learning the timeout technique. And they had a little boy who just constantly would not listen, and he would talk back to them. And so they were learning how to put him in timeout for him to serve that consequence for doing whatever he did. So he is supposed to give a marker back to his sister. His mom says, give the marker back. He chooses not to. So they have to put him in timeout. It takes 67 times of putting him back in timeout for him to accept it. Now, I know some of you would say, I'm not doing anything for 67 times. That's ridiculous. They're going to listen to me, right? I hear you and I feel you on that. However, that 67 times of putting that child back showed, like, you're not going to wear me out. I am the parent and you will do what I say. Right. So on the 67th time, and he stayed there, that mom was amazed because she never would have believed he would have done it. But she showed who had the power and who was in charge. Right. She said, you are going to serve a timeout. He was 3. It's 3 minutes. Right. So it took hours to serve a 3 minute. But what she did was set the stage of, I am the parent. These are the expectations, and you will do them, and you will serve your time. So what we then saw was the next time she said, here's your stop doing what you're doing, or you're going to serve a timeout. The kid was like, oh, I remember that. No, thank you. And he changed his behavior. So there's a comment that said, what if you have a strong-willed child who says, I'm not going to do the chore, right? So you are going to do the chore, and it may take a while, but what we're not going to do is we're not going to move on to the next fun activity or the next thing planned until you do, right? So we're not going to read our book. We're not going to play our game. We're not going to have any screen time. We're not going to go outside and play. We're not going to do the next thing that we are going to do until you serve your consequence. So that might be hard at first, but when your child sees you're consistent, they very much understand that we're not moving on with the next phase of life until it's complete, right? And so what I want you guys to often remember is a lot of these children have been at school, right? So they can follow the rules at school, they can serve a consequence at school, and there's not an issue. So you can transfer those skills at home. So they're used to doing it. They just haven't been used to doing it with you. So if you have an issue at school and you have an issue at home, then usually the problem is consistency, right? Schools are usually consistent. If you do this, then that. So I really work with parents on language, if this, then that, right? So if you continue to be disrespectful, then a consequence will occur, right? So if this, then that. So you're telling them if they continue to do whatever behavior it is, then they will serve a consequence. And you may have something that's, predetermined that you could fill in the blank. But what you'll see is that behavior will change when you are consistent, or that behavior will change when they have to earn something, or that behavior will change when they're not allowed to use something, right? So if their routine is they get to ride their bike in the afternoon, well, I'm really sorry you can't ride your bike until you've done your chore, right? So if we get dessert after dinner, I'm really sorry that we can't have dessert because you haven't completed your chore, right? So we had dinner. Dinner is what's mandatory. Dessert is a privilege. And so if you can't complete what needs to be done, we've kind of moved on to the next stage, right? So dessert is only open until, I don't know, 8, because at 8:15 we get ready for bed. So you're just going to miss out. And it hasn't changed, right? That chore still has to be done before we do the next best thing. So kids don't like things that they enjoy being taken away, right? So let's say your bedtime routine consists of two books and a song, right? And so you've had a bad day and you say, if I have to tell you again, we're going to lose our song tonight, right? And that might be their favorite thing that they want to do. So they're like, oh, I don't want to lose my song tonight. Let me change my behavior. But we're giving them that warning and we're giving them that chance to make a choice. And so choice is the biggest thing in here. That ending that chaos becomes part of choosing how you manage yourself, right? So it's your choice to have a consequence because you chose not to do what you were supposed to do. So that's how we're looking at that chaos. So I know we kind of talked about several different things in there, but we talked about that morning routine, having things written down so that there is an understanding of what's expected of them, having that time frame for them, and really enforcing a time frame, from that 8-year-old range. When they're little, you control the time because they have no sense of time, but you want to make sure that you stay on time to keep the schedule consistent. Because what's not fair is, you choose not to get up on time, which may happen if you happen to oversleep. But sometimes we want to hit that snooze button and hit it again. And then we're rushing them because of our choice to sleep extra. And so your expectation of them has changed because because you chose to sleep in. So most of this discipline and most of this chaos is associated with choice. And so we're really trying to teach that we have choices to make, and because of those choices, we have consequences. And it's our job as parents to give those consequences. So we're at 6:56. Usually we stop at 7 to take questions, so we're just about on time. What have I missed, right? So I do this all the time and I talk about this often. what have I missed in here? What are you thinking, like, oh, I wish you could touch on this when it comes to routines, or I wish you would touch on something. What am I missing? Feel free to either talk to me or put it in chat. What am I missing? What's chaotic in your life? What do you wish would be different? What can I help you with? And I'll give us a minute. Can Sarah, can they talk?
They actually cannot talk,
Okay.
so they need to put their question in the chat.
Okay.
And I went ahead and put Catherine's information there so you guys have it if you need to email her later, like she said. And I will also put in the link to the survey too while I'm thinking about it.
Yes, please. So the survey that she's putting in there, this is how we keep things free. So I report back to the Boone County Children's Service Board about how many families I've served, how many people show up to the things that we do. So this is a way for you to electronically go in and fill out the survey, and then it'll kick you, this is a pre-survey, and then it'll kick you back a post-survey. So it's just looking at, was our program helpful to you? Should we keep it around? And so Triple P has been a program that was introduced about 2 years ago, and it has been very positive in parents' lives. When I look across the spectrum of who comes, it's all types of people, it's all types of ethnicities, it's all types of financial people, right? Parenting doesn't change based on your finances, right? It's hard to be a parent whether you have money or you don't. It just makes the circumstances a little difficult, right? So I have all types of age, finances, and everything that come for parenting. So definitely here to support you. Okay, tips for smoother bedtimes with younger kids. So I would ask, usually when we talk about bedtime, do you have a bedtime routine? So again, kids like to know what is the expectation. And so we always start from the very beginning when we're going to make changes in the family is to have a family meeting. So that's a time when no one is upset with each other. We're not, things are not chaotic. We're coming together because we're going to make plans for the household and we're going to make change. So we would introduce, what is our bedtime routine? What does that look like? So when you're making a bedtime routine, what time does that routine start? What's the first steps? Is it a bath night? Is it not? Not everybody takes a bath every night. So, having that expectation of, it's a bath night on there. After we get out of the bath, we dry ourselves off. So we put our PJs on, we brush our teeth. And then we do, what is our wind down routine? So is it 2 stories in a book? Is it a song in a book? What is our routine before we wind down and go to bed? So for a lot of people, it is a story while they're in bed, maybe 2 stories in bed, or, maybe a couple of songs. And then the expectation is that when we are done, we don't get out of bed anymore and we go to sleep. So we can definitely do some one-on-ones if you already have a routine and that routine isn't working, then let's talk about why that routine isn't working, and I'll happily do a one-on-one with you. Okay, so I don't know how old that child is, Sam, that you're mentioning, but if they are old enough to snatch things or take things, they are old enough for a consequence. So the consequence is, at that younger age, we really look into time in or time out, and there is a difference. So depending on what age you're talking about, time in is where they would have to come sit next to you for a certain amount of time, and then you reintroduce them back. And that's like a very shortened version of that and not the best. So I would definitely talk to you, about that. So let's say the kids are all playing. So you have a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and they're sitting there playing nicely. And you see the 4-year-old take something from the 2-year-old, and you say, hey, we don't take things from our brother. I don't know what sex they are. We don't take things from our brother. We ask and we share, right? So you would take the toy back from the 4-year-old, give it back to the 2-year-old. And you would say, if you take that from brother again, you're going to have a timeout. right? So we would go into the timeout process of 4 minutes for him. But the 2-year-old is doing it, right? So sometimes we say, we don't think a 2-year-old can be able to serve a consequence. Well, actually, what we're doing is teaching that 2-year-old what is the expectation, right? So we use different, maybe a little bit different language. So if the 2-year-old takes it for the 4-year-old, your 4-year-old is looking like, hey, you told me I can't do it. They can't do it to me. So what you would say to your 2-year-old is, we don't take toys from brother, we share, right? And so we would still give it back. And we would say to the 2-year-old again, we share our toys and we don't take things. So we're really giving them those reminders and showing our 4-year-old like we have the same expectation. So let's say the 2-year-old takes it back, right? We would give it back to the 4-year-old. We would pick up our 2-year-old and set them next to us. And we would give that reminder. We don't take things from brother, we share. And you would kind of keep them there for 2 minutes, right? So he can see the activity going on, but he can't participate in the activity. And then we put him right back into the situation and let that child try again, right? So we are introducing them back. And so what we're trying to build is that action gets a consequence, right? So you took something from brother. I told you you weren't supposed to, and I gave it back to brother, right? You took it again. So I took it from you and I removed you so you can't play with it, right? So now you see it being played with. You don't even have the opportunity to play with it. And then I reintroduce you, right? So now you go to take a toy from brother, but that little bit of instinct says, if I take the toy from brother, brother gets it back and I don't get to play with anything. So you really start that concept of pairing an action with a consequence, right? So at 2, we still can do that pairing. We're just usually removing them from the situation or taking that from them and giving it back to the other child. So we're really having a little bit more pairing with the 2-year-old than the 4-year-old, because the 4-year-old understands all your words, where the 2-year-old only understands pieces and they understand like the moving of something, right? So I'm removed. So we actually talk about the difference between time in and time out. And those have specific age ranges for that. So for those littler kids that we're really trying to teach the concept to, because it's new to them, right? So at 2, sharing is new. Soft touching, it may be new, right? So 2-year-olds instantly hit and they don't really know their own strength sometimes, or they're hitting with a toy. And so we're working on words like no hitting, right? Or soft touches. So we're really using our words, but we're taking them away from the situation where they can still view it and have access to it and see it, but they don't have access to play. So what happens if the 2 and 4-year-old can't get along and they're fighting over the same toy, and you've done the timeouts and they come back and they're fighting over the toy? So sadly, the toy itself becomes unavailable for the rest of the day. So since the 2 of you can't share and you can't take turns, because that's what you were introducing, then the toy itself becomes unavailable. And it can come back out tomorrow. And then we are saying, we hope tomorrow you guys will be able to take turns and share, right? So now no one gets to play with it. Since we couldn't share it, nobody gets to play. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Does that kind of help with that 2 to 4-year-old age range? And like I said, if that doesn't work out, then we could kind of do something differently. And you are welcome to do like a one-on-one with me, so I can answer very specific questions or help you with certain situations or problems that you may have with your kiddos. What other things are you guys thinking about those morning chaos routines, getting the morning situation down? I'm going to give a minute. It takes a minute to type. So these kinds of discussions are good for all ages, because again, we're really building that concept of independent learning, independent thinking, futuristic thinking, right? So you're teaching the concept with the plan of later they'll be able to implement that themselves. So if we're teaching how to share, then as they get older, that concept becomes natural and they're able to do that. So when this program came about and our focus was early childhood, we had talked to teachers and said, how can we assist you? And teachers said, hey, I can teach reading, I can teach numbers, but I can't teach children to control their bodies and have that social emotional control. And what we saw was parents said, I know what's supposed to be done. I just don't have the concepts down. And so, I work with you to get those concepts down and get that to be concrete. And we do what works best for your family, right? The good thing with Triple P is the concepts are universal, but there's no one fit plan for yourselves, right? So when I first started this, I had a parent whose kid tantrumed about 10 times a day. When we got down to 4, she said, I'm happy and I'm comfortable. But somebody may say 4 tantrums a day is unacceptable to me, right? But that was what was acceptable for her. And I can definitely report now that they actually moved out of the tantrum phase where it was occasional, right? Because she stuck with the concepts, continued to implement, and the behavior next to diminish to something that was just appropriate, age appropriate, right? All toddlers are going to tantrum at some point, right? But they were doing 10 times a day. Mom was ready to lose her mind. We got down to 4. Mom was very comfortable with that, and she later report back, hey, it's kind of phased out of our life. But I don't tell you what's best for your family, right? I work with you to figure out what's going to work best for your family. And then we model off of that, right? So there's not a best fit. I don't tell you, you need to have 2 tantrums a day, or you need to do this, right? We work what's best for your family. You take the concept and you continue to work it in your family. So that's what I do. So here's so the question is, do consequences always need to be undesirable to the child? What do you do if you find the consequences not a deterrent to the behavior because the child does not, for instance, mind dusting or the ceiling, dusting or doing whatever? So usually you do want consequences to be something that that is undesirable, because you want the behavior to change and you want them to choose not to have a consequence. But if the child likes dusting, then you just wouldn't put that in there, right? So you're trying to find something else. Or consequences may not be what works for your child. They may need to be an earner, right? So earning screen time, earning going to McDonald's and getting an ice cream, earning going to the Dollar Tree. They may need to be an earner instead, right? So their motivation will be because they're going to earn something versus they're going to lose something. And so you have to figure that out. So the question is Triple P help available free of charge? So yes, as long as you live in Boone County, because that's who's funding it. It's free. There's no financial means to meet. It's free to anyone who lives in Boone County, regardless of finances or anything. You don't have to qualify to get in. You just have to want the help and live in Boone County. Our seminars, we don't ask where you're from. And so they're open to anyone. And what we found, though, anybody who lives out of Boone County who attends one of our seminar is usually working with the family. So I've had a grandma who lives in Jeff City come to the seminars because she drives to Columbia to take care of the children through the day. And Boone County Services Board realized that benefit was for the child who lived in Boone County versus the grandma was getting something who lived in another county. So our tax dollars were still at work for the child who lived in the county. So that's why we do these seminars for anyone. And then our one-on-one direct sessions must be for someone who lives in the Boone County. And again, yes, totally free, 100% free. I'm pretty flexible in terms of times. So right now we are 100% Zoom, which makes it even easier. Prior to Zoom, I tried to work with parents and meet them where they're at. So I often went to houses during nap time. I had a parent where I actually went to the gym with them. So they got 2 hours of free daycare at the gym. They worked out for an hour, and then I met them at the gym and they worked with me for an hour so they didn't have their kid. So they had some form of babysitting because they were a stay-at-home parent. So a lot of times we'll try to brainstorm how to work through the issues. So I do work with you as a parent. I don't need the kiddo because I'm usually giving you tactics that you're going to use with your kid, right? So I'm making the behavior change you're going to institute because I'm not going to always be there with you. So if I work with your child, the child's behavior may change, but it may change for me, not for you. So I work with you to implement the change. So the next time something comes up, you already have some tools in your toolbox to use to change to like the next situation or the next scenario. So we usually do not have to work with the child. So that's another thing. We don't need the child present. So which was good when children are at school, right? So I wasn't looking for parents to have to take their kid out of school. So now that everyone's home and in a happy family, right? Yay. I work with you on when's the best time for you. So when you're not working or you're not being a teacher at home or a monitor at home, we would work on when is the best time. Nowadays, I think it would be a Wednesday, right? Because that's when they're not mandated to be at school or something like that. But whatever works best for you. We do have evening times. I do work with blended families. So, what's it going to look like at one household? Sometimes it's really hard to say implement change from one household to the other. But a lot of times if the change is beneficial to the child will institute the change elsewhere. And an example of that is I had a kiddo who really struggled with bedtime. We got a great bedtime routine. He was earning things. He was going to bed as he was supposed to at his mom's house. And his mom and dad really didn't get along well, and they didn't talk to each other. But he went to his dad's house and he was out of his elements. He didn't have his routine. And he told his dad, I need you to learn the bedtime routine, right? So the child institutes to dad, you need to learn the routine. Well, dad called the mom. It's like, what is this? I don't understand. And mom referred him to me, right? So we set up the same type of bedtime routine at mom's house, and it was very similar at dad's house, but the child knew what to expect, and the child was happy in that instance. And the dad and the child were able to make some great bonding over bedtime stories and things that he hadn't usually done. He is usually like, all right, 8:30, go to bed. And, the child would be expected to just go up and go to bed. But when we instituted that bedtime routine, he and dad really got to do some bonding over bedtime stories. Dad got out of his element and sang some silly songs, and they just really had that enjoyment of starting a bedtime routine. And the child was able to go to bed and get up the next day and have better behaviors at dad because he was consistently going to bed. So definitely willing to work with blended houses as well. Any other questions or things that I could help with? So again, if you need to work on evening routines, bedtime routines, homework routines, homework expectations, anything like that, reach out to me. I'm happy to help. I'm happy to help set up some of those things and be a support for you. And again, yes, 100% free.
Oh, thank you so much, Catherine. And we all need some routine these days. So even if you're working from home, I'm sure you can take some of these ideas for yourself as well. So we thank you all for coming. I will still be sending the link out to the video to everybody that was here tonight and those that couldn't make it. So please feel free to share that with friends. It will also have the link to the survey in it as well. So thanks so much for coming. We're going to take a little break in December, January, but Catherine and PPP will be back with us for February, March, April, and May. And so keep your eyes peeled for that. And until then, you've got her email and her contact information. So thank you so much for coming to the library tonight. We miss you all in person, but we're glad to be able to meet this way and to get this information out there. So thank you all for coming.
Bye, guys.